The year is 2022, as in right now. Happy belated New Year to the Jandek community. And how fitting for me to kick off the year with today's album. In 2021, I made videos for the majority of classic Jandek albums, as well as a special for the spoken era. Truth be told, what I originally set out to accomplish is over and done with. However, that doesn't even cover a third of the artist's catalog, and I think ignoring the many oddities of modern Jandek would be a dishonor to this project. While I don't feel a need to pump out reviews like I used to, 2022 will mark the beginning of my extra credit era. In the catalog, this corresponds to the dawn of the fourth era, or the 19 studio albums following the spoken era. Yes, it is time to call them studio albums, since the first live one was not far off at this point. Anyway, as I said in my review of The Beginning, my guess is that Jandek released these records right after recording them, which could explain why Jandek's voice sounded older than what fans were used to. Also worth noting is that the fourth era was the first without collaborators. While the albums do fall under a few different categories, Jandek alone was responsible for that. It may not be his most popular era, but at least it began on a high note. If I ever crave modern Jandek, I would say half the time I turn on I Threw You Away. Maybe that's because it had the first song from this period I actually liked. I was not originally fond of the first one I heard. Anyway, while Jandek's new voice is probably the most notable feature, the guitar also sounds different from before. In a different video, I remember saying the guitar's timbre was different at this point, but for this album, the change in tuning is what really stands out. The third era had a variety of unique tunings, while I Threw You Away features a more standard one. Several minutes of that could easily start to wear on you, but fortunately, Jandek does two things to help with that. A, he frets the guitar, and B, he whips out that blues harp for 2 tracks, which actually sounds pretty funny coupled with the tuning. When you look at the track list, the first thing you'll notice is the length of the songs. The average is roughly 9.5 minutes, much longer than any of the classic records. In the fourth era, that's something to get used to. Anyway, this album begins with Blues Turned Black, the longest and easily the darkest track. Jandek songs have usually been rooted in the blues, but that song title seems to imply that his music has entered a whole new shade of blues. I guess it turns black when you sing from the afterlife, which is sort of what happens in the lyrics. With discolored flesh, the narrator lies in a kind of cemetery because of the line, "I couldn't stay high." Cemetery might just be Jandek's way of describing the later stages of a drug addiction. If that's how you want to look at it, several other lyrics would certainly reflect your mood in that kind of scenario.
It's been so many years. I lost so many tears.
The icing on this dismal cake is Jandek's occasional howling, as if his only remaining companion is the moon. While Blues Turned Black is one of the better tracks, the next one is of more interest to me. In 2013, It Seems Forever was one of those songs I chose to cover despite never hearing it. The result was the most hilariously up-tempo thing I ever came up with. I was proud of the guitar riff, but for thoughtful lyrics like these, the vocals sounded quite rushed. Not to mention, the album's shortest track is still longer than Metallica's One, yet my version wasn't even 3 minutes. Anyway, Jandek introduces his front-side, back-side concept, which I'm guessing is about how we appear versus how we think. He characterizes his life as a game in which he doesn't keep score, so winning is not a factor. Then he addresses his maker in a way that's reminiscent of the song I Need Your Life.
I told my maker I'd be real good.
Finally, you'll notice Jandek's third usage of the phrase "follow your footsteps," possibly making it his favorite album title in the catalog. I Threw You Away has one of my least favorite title tracks in the catalog. The highlight is probably the line where Jandek gets chopped up by a butcher and takes a long time to piece himself back together. If you're willing to wait a minute after the lyrics, you are also treated to a fairly long harmonica solo, although I would have preferred to hear it in the middle. Moving on, we have Frozen Beauty, the track that's been growing on me the most. I almost never listened to this one, but only recently did I take a closer look at the lyrics. It sounds like they're about a dead woman, although the part about praying at her gravestone might just be symbolic. Whatever the case, the point is that they've been apart for a while, so Jandek's mental image of her is frozen in time, as the title suggests. Despite all the pain, he realizes it helped shape what he currently is, so he is ready to reclaim his life and learn to live with the frozen beauty engraved in his mind. The World Stops is the aforementioned first song I liked from this period. Had it not been for sale in the iTunes store, this would not have been the case. Lyrically, this is the most unusual track on the album, since it has a little sci-fi twist. The narrator has been on some kind of journey, perhaps an acid trip, and now he waits for a high-speed rocket to take him back. Once the trip is over, objects take on a new character in his mind, even though he knows they haven't changed physically. Each verse is punctuated by a harmonica solo, giving the song some extra structure that the others seem to lack. Overall, it's an interesting conclusion to the album. One more notable feature is the album cover. Earlier ones focused on Jandek himself, his house, or his possessions. However, I Threw You Away began the trend of vacation photos that modern Jandek is known for. In this case, we see a neighborhood in Cork, Ireland, with a cathedral in the distance. Apparently, the license plates on the cars indicate that the picture was taken in the 80s, so this was the earliest proof of Jandek being a well-traveled man. Perhaps it foreshadowed his many concerts in the years ahead. As for today's album, Seth Tissue called it the best album since Glad to Get Away, and while I think he was underrating Newtown, I Threw You Away is perhaps the best introduction to modern Jandek you could ask for. The lyrics are what really shine, while some songs feature better guitar playing than others. Overall, this is most certainly not an album to throw away.